and also new faces. So my sobriety date is September 2nd, 2018. I was taken through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous by Byoc in, I guess it was March, April of 2020. And I finally had a spiritual experience, which is why I chose this reading, because it definitely changed the whole course of my sobriety, the course of my life, gave me a permanent sobriety date. I had a lot of sobriety dates in my life. It's 20 years, 20 years of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I consider all of that my alcoholism. Even the time that I was sober, and sometimes I had, years sober, but I never had freedom. I never felt recovered. I always was wishing, I wasn't an alcoholic. There was always a part of me that thought, it's just not me, like I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to grow out of this. I'll think my way out of this. I'll manage it. I'll make it work in my life. Even if I could just be, like manage my alcoholism, I was okay with that. But I did hit a bottom, and thank God. And, when we were just reading that, it just made me turn to Dr. Bob's nightmare, because in my heart, like even just showing up here today, why do I do it? And it says here, 1, sense of duty. 2, it is a pleasure. 3, because in so doing, I am paying my debt to the man who took the time to pass it on to me. Some of those people are on here today. And 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. So what that tells me is this is necessary. It's necessary for me to show up and speak. It's necessary for me to carry this message to other alcoholics, which really is the most important thing in my life today. It always comes first. I'm away right now. I was away a week ago. I've been around a ton of alcohol. It just so happens that, both trips are in places where there's alcohol everywhere. I don't think about it. I mean, it's just like, it's so amazing to me that I am completely unfazed, and to the point where I'm having a blast, because it was just so different. It was so different. I would have some time sober, and sober was always better, right? Sober looks better, sober feels better, for a while. And I had good times, but I was never okay. Like I was never had that joy and that peace and that comfort and that power, like wherever I go, I have this power of God within me, because as soon as I went through those 12 steps and I got to that power, it's never left. It's like, it's like a force shield. It's like the best superpower you could have. And I got that from going through these steps and these spiritual principles. I chose that because there's some that were necessary that I had to have at least a little bit of, in order to go through these steps. And I actually pulled them up. And it talks about, I just want to say, it talks about in a spiritual experience, there's a line towards the end, and it says, let's see, we find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. So I have to have these things, right? That's the only way I'm going to recover, is if I'm willing to, right? We know nobody gets sober who doesn't want to get sober. Honesty, knowing, that's our first step, concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholics. I thought the first step was going to a meeting saying, hi, I'm Kristine, I'm an alcoholic, and it's not even close. It's not even close, because, like how many things have I said in my life that were lies? Like it's so easy, after a while to just say that and not believe it for the longest time. But when I could really be honest and know, like, this is who I am. I am an alcoholic. I have no control of the amount of alcohol I take. I cannot stay stopped. I'm drinking against my will. I have no power to stop on my own. Nothing has ever worked. No important event, no important person, no amount of willpower, and I have tons of willpower in all these other areas, but I'm an alcoholic. So I will never be able to muster willpower for alcoholism because it just doesn't exist for me. So, that's that first step to get honest. And then the next spiritual principle of willingness shows up in step 6. But before that, like for all these other ones, I have to have hope in step 2, faith in step 3, courage in step 4, and integrity in step 5. I mean, those are really big things, and how do I get that? Those things, before I had them for myself, I got from you guys. I got the hope, from listening to people who said, it can work. And I got the real hope I got from the people who were recovered, who were happy, who were smiling, who were living this life and weren't like showing up at a meeting and complaining and like me hearing things like I thought my life was over. And sometimes it really sounded that way in a meeting. There were meetings I would go to and it just sounded like, a really bad therapy. And I thought, is this it? Is this what it? And I thought, well, maybe drinking's better. Maybe drinking, the feelings I feel when I'm drinking are better than the feelings I have when I start to try to get sober. Until I started hearing people who had been through this work and had this spiritual experience and were saying like, this is the greatest thing that's happened like ever. They were happier sober than they were drunk. Like they were talking about this new life. They were talking about being rocketed into a 4th dimension of existence. And I was like, well, what's that? I used to try to get rocketed all the time. I would use all sorts of different combinations to try to get rocketed into a 4th dimension of existence, and that would only last for a little while, because I'd always come back down, and so that gave me the hope. And the faith I got from just like, blind faith at first, I believed in God, but God to me was something out there, and I remember, especially even I saw Terry was on here, he was talking about, you got to find God deep down within you, so I started looking, I just did what you guys said. And I was, my prayers were just, I don't even know, like, God, I don't know who you are, what you are. They say you're deep down within me, help me to find you. And it worked, right? Like all these things worked. And I started to feel like I was building this relationship. Today it's the biggest relationship in my life. And I've had to make really tough choices. There are times where I've had to make really tough choices because I always choose God, right? God will always win, because without God, I will drink again. Without God, I'll go back to being miserable. And without God, like to me, that's not even a choice, because that's how big this relationship has grown to be. My relationship with God is number one. And then the courage, right? I had to have the courage to go through this work, to really take a look at myself, to be able to see the truth, right? The truth about myself, the courage to be honest, the courage not to hide things, to just let it all, let it out. And it wasn't about like me sitting down and doing this work and me telling you my whole life story. It was about, like it says in our book, getting down to causes and conditions. Let's look at the facts, right? Let's look at the facts of how you act, how I act, how I behave, what I've done, who I've done it to, what are my patterns, what do I keep doing? And let's get real. Like, let's take a hard look and find out like where I am on page 62 of this book. My selfishness and my self-centeredness. I didn't know that's what made me drink. I didn't know that was my number one problem. I thought alcohol was my number one problem. I thought the places I hung out, I thought the people I was with, I thought those things were my problem. I thought if I could change certain things on the outside, I would be able to change on the inside. And it was completely opposite. It had nothing to do with the outside. It had everything to do with how I was thinking, how I was behaving, because selfishness, I didn't know. It's just, self-centeredness is me thinking about myself all the time, whether it's positive or negative. So whether it's, I get this ego when I go out drinking and I'm thinking highly of myself, or, when I want to kill myself the next day, and I'm just thinking and it's depression. Either way, right? Either way, I'm unuseful. I'm ineffective. I'm stuck in myself, and that trap of being stuck in ourselves, of alcoholism, of not being able to get out of those thoughts, not being able, I felt like I was on like the hamster wheel or the carousel or the revolving door, and I kept ending up like the wrong way. Like I just couldn't get out. I kept going back in and, to go through this work. And then the thing is, right, so I need these spiritual principles to go through the work. But then as I'm going through it and I have this spiritual experience, I have to start putting these other spiritual principles in my life on a daily basis and adhere to them, because otherwise, like, I'll drink again. I'm not cured. I'm recovered. I can easily start drinking again. Give me a little time. All I have to do is stop helping others, stop praying, stop showing up and sharing. It won't take long. It won't take me long. I know the history. I've been down the road before, so I take this very, very seriously, and this idea of humility, love, discipline, patience, perseverance, service. These are the other principles that start showing up as we're going through these steps. Like I didn't even know what humility was, like I'm lucky if I have it like a little bit of the time, each day, like it shows up like a little bit, and the biggest humility is knowing that like, I can't do this. I don't know what's best. God knows better. Listen to the people who've been practicing this longer than you. Listen to the people with time. If something bothers you, there's probably a reason. And when I'm saying you, like me, right? If something gets under my skin, that's a suggestion, then maybe I need to look at that, and love, like just, I could not connect, with people. I just couldn't be connected. I was disconnected from myself. So I was that type of person in relationships and friendships and anything where it was like, if it was over, it was over, because I was never really there. It was like a light switch. It was like, completely uninvested emotionally. I just didn't even know how to be. And I come and I learn, how to start loving other people, how to love myself. And that comes from God, and that comes from being of service and starting to help others and seeing that, like, what, all of these things that I've done, all of these, like, whatever terrible things I thought I did, I've been able to help others with, it serves a purpose. And, discipline, I love that one because, I just thought I had to come to meetings, like that was it, go to meetings, call a sponsor, and these were all things I couldn't even do because I, like, in my head, I'm thinking like how they used to tell me do the next right thing. I was always doing the next wrong thing, do the inconvenient thing. I was always doing the convenient thing, and those are the things I still sometimes want to do, right? Because that's the easier thing. But in the long run, when I'm disciplined, that actually becomes the easier, softer way, right? When I start practicing these things and these things start to become a habit, it's like I literally have to do, and practice these principles 24/7 for a while. And then those start to become the natural things. So this reading came from 85, and Into Action. And it talks about in the middle, it talks about it's easy to let up on the program of action and rest on our laurels. And this is a major warning. Right? Rest on our laurels. What have, I've done a lot. Maybe I don't need to do that much anymore. And let up. I love that because I always think of how when you're driving and you just let up on the pedal a little bit, right? You're not stopping. Letting up tells me I can't even do that. I can't even let up. The thing about this book is everything in it I have found to be true because there's tons of warnings. There's tons of conditions. I have enough relapses in my backpack to tell you that every time they warn us in this book, if we don't do what it says, we will drink again. It's happened every single time for me. And then the promises, right, where it says, if you do this, then this, if this, then this, all of those come true too. Because when I started doing what it actually said, instead of not following the warnings, and I started actually practicing this, I was like, oh my God, like this is really true. Like I remember doing my fifth step and sitting in it being like, just feeling so different. Like everything felt different, and I remember like texting like our group text and being like, what'd you guys do with Finny? Like, she's not even here. I'm like, I pulled out the stove and I vacuumed behind it and I'm happy. Like, what's going on? And it was just like this lightness. And it tells us, we'll begin to lose our fear. And my entire life was filled with fear. Not being good enough was always there, 24/7 for everything. From the time I can remember a thought, until March of 2020, that's a long time. That's 40 something years of being afraid, and then to have that lifted, to have that promise come true. And it started to come true in 5. And it's just there all the time. I really don't have that much fear. It might creep in here and there, but I go to God and it says he'll remove it, and he does, right? We have a very short fear prayer. God, please remove my fear of whatever. Please remove my fear of talking and being honest about my feelings and direct my attention to how you would have me be. Please remove my fear of, showing up for this, interview or whatever it is, and direct my attention to how you would have me be. It gives us everything we need in this book for resentments, for fears, for sex conduct, for any kind of relationship. And, it says also we are headed for trouble if we do. Alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. What's our spiritual condition? Well, I can see what it is because I can just look at, do I have these principles in my life? And as we get service, right? Service should be in my life every single day. I should be serving others. Should be serving people in AA. I should be of service at work. I should be of service in my family. I should be of service in society. Like, what am I doing to give to others? Because if I'm just going through my day, and going through the motions of my day and looking at like, how can I steal some vicarious pleasure? I'm in big trouble. I'm in big trouble. My job is to be helpful. I spent a lot of years taking, a lot of years, I have a spiritual teacher who talks about, be light. Don't be heavy when you're around, like, be like the light presence, don't cause weight when you walk into a room or into a situation. How people who cause weight when it's heavy and it's like they're complaining or they're draining or it's all about them or it's all negativity. What, what aura am I bringing? And that is, that says a lot for Alcoholics Anonymous. Not everybody knows I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous, but most people know I'm sober. So what am I making that look like? I know today what I'm making it look like because I've been around a lot of people who can't even believe that, like, I'm sober and, I'm hanging out on cruises and, I've been to casinos, and I'm okay and I'm fine and I'm having fun and I'm completely unaffected and I don't miss drinking, and I'm not like sad. I'm not a glum lot, these aren't things that like are a habit of my life. But, when I show up for others and I have trips with, I go on trips with my family and it might not be the place I choose or the thing that I would have on the top of my list to do. But today I'm a part of other things, I'm a part of friendships. I'm a part of my family. I can go and not make it be about me, because it always used to be, oh, like, look at me, like I can't drink and, you guys are making me feel this way or whatever. I don't know. It was just like a drain to others. Today I can try to just be of service, to be positive, to be loving. And I get that opportunity everywhere I go. I get that opportunity as a teacher. I get to be loving. It's like I get to practice these principles. It's just whether I choose to. I have all these opportunities to practice these principles in my life and all my affairs, but what am I going to do? Right? Because at the end of the day, it's between me and God. It's not between me and anybody else. It's between me and God. And I just want you to know, Young, I'm not timing myself. So I don't know if you're going to give me a warning when it's going to be like, you're going to give me a warning? Okay, good. So I just want to read this part. It says, much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. And what was very different when I started going through the work this time is that I was directed right to God. I was directed to go to God with all of my problems, as soon as they came up, whether I believed it was going to work or not, get in the practice, and I had people I could talk to, and I have a sponsor, but my sponsor's in Maryland, right? She can't drive to my house in the middle of the night if something's going on. I needed to get this direct line of power. And when I just if you guys don't have this yet, just start practicing, because God is all powerful. He does have all power. He does have all knowledge. He sees the big picture, right? I can't see what's around the corner. I can't see what's down the tunnel. It's dark. God has the light, right? Here's humility. Can I stop thinking that I know what's best, even for the world, right? Maybe God knows better. Good things happen and bad things happen. Probably for the greater good. Who knows, right? But I don't know. That's for certain. So when I find myself acting like I know, when I find myself being the judge, when I find myself, saying I know what's best, there's no humility there. That means I don't have that spiritual principle in my life, and I've had to change all different sorts of behaviors, and we do a little bit at a time. If you're brand new and you're just not drinking, that's the biggest focus. Go get with someone who's been through these steps and let them show you how to get sober. It's a step-by-step direction. It's a recipe. It works every time. It works every single time. For anyone who has practiced this book and followed what it says, I've never seen it fail. Anyone that had taken through the work, all different people. I'm nobody special. I'm just a woman with the book, right? It says if you're just one man with this book, that's all you need, right? None of us are getting the other person sober. We just have a little experience, right? We're just armed with the facts. I just know what it's like to be an alcoholic. I know what it's like to not be able to stop drinking. I know what it feels like over and over again to wake up in that despair, that it's powerful, that I'm confused, I feel desperate. I'm embarrassed. I'm humiliated. I've done it again. How did I do it again? Am I ever going to change? Will this ever stop? I know what that feels like, so I can help somebody. I'm coming from a place of not, judgment. And I didn't just read it in the book, right? I'm reading the book, but I've lived it. That's why one alcoholic can, helps another alcoholic. That's a program of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? That's how it started. That's what this fellowship is based on. That's how we started having meetings, because one alcoholic went to the other alcoholic, and then the two went to the third, and then they went to the fourth, right? And we carry this message to alcoholics, and we practice these principles in all our affairs, and we start to build some time. Patience and perseverance. Those are some good ones too, right? We have to persevere, and I have to be patient. That's the other thing. I love that one, start looking at these different defects, because I didn't realize I could be impatient with God. I could be impatient with myself. Maybe I'm not supposed to get better in that area right away. God figures it out. In the seventh step, it talks about us letting God deal with the defects. He knows what order they need to be removed in. In the third step, I ask him to direct my life. I don't tell him how to direct it. I don't tell him where I need the direction. He knows, right? Let him do it. All of these things, they just work. That third step works. The seventh step works. Carrying this message to another alcoholic works. Everything in this book is here to get us and keep us sober. At the end of step 11, it says, we alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. In the beginning, when I was going through this work, and the first time after I'd gone through 5 and I got to 6 and 7, I had to ask God to remove all this stuff. I could not change myself. Listen, there were a lot of things that I would have liked to have changed that I could not change. And there were a lot of things I didn't want to change, right? But I had to ask God, and he started removing these defects. But then I get to this point where now when I'm at steps 10, 11, and 12, now I have a job to do, right? Because he makes me able to live without these defects. He removes them enough. But then I have a responsibility, right? I have a responsibility when these things start to show up. I'm going to have a choice, right? I'm going to start to have a choice. Either I'm going to make the wrong choice or the right choice. So when I first come in here, I don't have a choice, right? I'm off the hook. I was never going to be able to do it on my own, right? I was never going to be able to stop these certain behaviors on my own. But then I go through the work, and God gives me this power. And now it's up to me whether I'm going to use it or not. Am I going to use it in the way I behave? And it's everything. How do I sound? How do I speak? How do I dress? Are the people I'm talking to and calling, is that appropriate? How, like everything about us. I get this ability to make right choices. And after living such a life filled with wrong choices, it's the greatest gift. It's what gives me joy. It's what gives me peace, and peace and joy. I don't know. I'm in Atlantic City. I've seen people win, a good amount of money. I've seen it on a cruise. I'm telling you, the Mega Millions, we hit the lotto. Like I would choose this any day of the week, any second, any month of the year. This is the jackpot. We have hit the jackpot. I have access 24/7. My jackpot isn't fleeting. Mine doesn't come and go. It runs through me, in me, always. And I can always count on that power, which is God, right? Like it's God. It's whatever your idea of God is. But we get that. We go through the steps. We get it. And then we never, ever have to drink again. So thank you guys for having me today.